Good evening, good night, wherever it is you are watching us. This is Follow Everton. I am Chad, coming to you from across the pond, across the Atlantic in the States. Joined with me is Aussie Chris. He is Australian. He's just not in Australia. And we are going to talk about Everton and the upcoming match just taking place in a few short hours against Albion on Saturday afternoon for you all in the UK, Saturday for morning for us in the States. Chris, how are you doing this week?
Oh, doing okay. End of the work week. I think accepting the result of Palace and just relaxing a little bit. How are you doing for that?
Yeah, I'm well. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Probably, I'm riding the high of revisiting last year's match. Went back and watched some highlights. I know that you were able to watch a good portion of last year's match anyway. And how could you not just feel so like jovial after watching that display from last year? I feel like we get one of those a season where we just lay it to somebody, and Brighton just happened to be the team last year where we were firing on all cylinders. So I'm in a great mood. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the match this weekend. I think Sean Dyche saw the error of his ways, or at least I hope he saw the error of his ways last weekend, and then we're able to turn it around tomorrow. Are you feeling hopeful, Chris? Are you feeling like, hey, we can repeat what we did last year?
Yes. I'm also really in my own head. After I did that session where I listened to Dyche talk back, it seemed as if he was very happy to just let everything slide, and the result, how we played, everything was all well and good. The effort was there. It's okay. And I'm like, okay, please tell me you've got more up your sleeve this week, because I know you did it last year. We had this amazing counterattack energy. We played high. We took risks. Granted, Calvert-Lewin was in a better state, but if we can go back there, I know I'm naively hopeful, but I'm aware that I'm naively hopeful, so I don't know what that means.
Well, I think we could fairly say that you had mentioned Dominic Calvert-Lewin was in a better state. He was in more form than he certainly seems to be right now. I think we could probably say that about a lot of the people that were in that side last year as opposed to this year, Dwight McNeil included, Decore, who is now obviously coming back into full fitness. So we hope that they can turn their form around. So real quick, full disclosure for everyone watching, we wanted to have a very different show tonight. We were hoping that we would get the results of the appeal, that we would get all of our 10 points back, and then maybe they would even throw some points on top of it for putting us through such an ordeal. Alas, they are continuing to screw with us, and we are seeing nothing from the commission. Maybe next week. So we had to change course a little bit with the show. We wanted to play the schedule game, which is a staple here in American radio. We were going to go through all the fixtures, identify, hey, how many points do we need now that we know where we really are sitting in the table? But we're going to wait on that. So we will hit you with another Midnight Blues probably next week or the week after that, and we'll do that schedule game. We'll track the fixtures, and we'll talk about how many points we think Everton need to stay in the Premier League for next season, and where we think we can get those. I thought it would be fun if we could start previewing the Brighton match by revisiting last season's, the 5-1 winner that we just talked about. So you revisited that. You said you watched the first half of that. What are your feelings having watched the first half of that match back again?
So watching back, what I found really quite interesting was that the team had so much like vigor, and they took risks. And the one that I think really stood out to me, DCL, and you can tell when he's feeling confident. There's a move that he does, like the pirouette, where he takes the ball with him.
Yes.
Instead of turning to his outside away from the defender, let's say it comes into him on his in the middle, on his inside. Let's say Dunk is behind him on his right shoulder. He will turn on his right, take it on his right instep, and go. And I think that's the kind of thing we haven't seen, that the turn and go expression where he's taking on defenders. And part of why, and I stuck my lineup kind of rolling through on the bottom, I feel like he needs a reset of some form. And Dyche on his press conference, he was brought up. Let me check here quickly. They had asked the return of Decore relieving pressure on DCL, and he saying like nothing new for him, need something to apply pressure for him to be at that level. And honestly, that's part of the problem, that I feel like he doesn't get held to account enough.
Mm-hmm. I think what DCL needs is a little bit of what James Tarkowski is apparently getting enough of these days. It was quite the rave in Everton media. James Tarkowski's new wife stole the show, and I think that's what's missing in DCL's life right now. I think we all know, well, some of us all know what it's like having a new baby in the house. So please, 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 DCL, do whatever you got to do around pointers from Tarky in the back, and we'll see if we can turn your fitness around. So let's revisit last year's match. You teased what DCL did with his pirouette move. So if we were going to go back and look at that match, I think the first thing that we have to talk about is this is when Yerry Mina came into the side. We were all preaching. No more Michael Keane. Please, no more Michael Keane. God save us, no more Michael Keane. And we finally, after all the pleading, we got Yerry Mina back in the side, paired with Tarky in the back. Unfortunately, Seamus Coleman was also out at this point with his injury. So Patterson had to come back in the lineup again, playing right back. So our back four, we started with Miko on the left, Tark, Mina, and then Patterson holding back four. I think we could get something similar to that this year, with the exception, obviously, swapping out Mina for Branthwaite. In my opinion, I think that's almost a wash. I think Branthwaite is playing incredibly well this year.
We're not bringing Mina back, are we?
Wouldn't that be great? Just as a sub. And then we may very well get Coleman back in the side. So is this kind of what you're anticipating tomorrow, Chris, is we might see a repeat of a similar back line?
Yeah, and what we'll hide our faces for a moment and show the graphic of what the lineup was from last year and SofaScore's ratings. So we talked about DCL was in the starting lineup. Decore was firing. Probably the one-time head of Toffee TV ever gave anyone a 10. SofaScore gave him a 9.9. He got 2 goals and induced the own goal. We had Garner and Gay in the middle. A lot of brilliant turnovers in the one half I was re-looking at yesterday. Mikalenko was starting to get back into form. Mina was being his old cheeky self, giving himself a yellow card within like 5 minutes. Patterson had a lot of confidence and was taking those risks we were talking about. Tarky, before he changed number to number 6, was doing quite well back there, and Pickford had quite the game as well. The other part, of course, that we know is the midfield is quite different from Brighton this year. We don't have Alistair and Caicedo. It's really quite common for us to see, what is his name, Mahmoud Dahoud, as well as Adam Lallana. And then Karim Mitoma has stayed in his position. Welbeck is typically staying up at that number 9. And Bonanotte didn't have a good match against us that night, and McNeil completely took him over. But they've had a really informed winger in Simon Adingra. He got that goal, I think, in the semi-final of the AFCON for Ivory Coast, and got a brace, kind of a lucky set, but was playing really well against Sheffield. And then that back four looks pretty similar. I think Webster won't be there. They'll have Von Heck. And who is the keeper they have now, Chad?
They are Verbruggen.
Verbruggen.
I mean,
okay.
Bart Verbruggen. It sounds like I just coughed something up. I apologize. Bart Verbruggen. I'm probably butchering that name. Hey, can you pull that back up real quick? Becky, thank you so much. We love you. You too, Lulu. You guys are so kind in the chat. Let's talk real quick about that Everton side that we did put out here against Brighton. To me, the biggest loss here is Alex Iwobi on the right. He was just the glue that I felt like was keeping this squad together last year. And the funniest thing is, when Fulham came in and offered us the 20 or so million that they did for him, I almost wondered. I was like, is this a sneaky way of Fulham just trying to sabotage our season enough so it keeps them out of the relegation zone? Because they knew they were going to lose their striker, which they did. So I was curious, did they really want Iwobi, or did they just not want Iwobi. How do you feel about the Harrison for Iwobi swap? It feels like a downgrade to me.
It does. Now, Harrison at times has a similar kind of energy and vigor. I liked Iwobi's energy. Sometimes energy isn't enough in these kind of matches. But honestly, that was when he played in the middle at the beginning of the year, everyone was like, first man on the team sheet, just excellent. He was
Yeah.
robust, and he had that Doucouré-esque energy, and he was winning the ball a lot. Then they moved him to right, sort of. We didn't have anybody else. He didn't have as much effect, but on a match that I hope we replicate, there was a lot of pressing, waiting for a silly mistake. Estupinian, Matoma, and a few others gave it away, and just taking risks, going deep, going to the channels, playing the early cross that we were desperate to see, and we didn't see it last week. So it'll be really interesting to see if we see it this time.
Yeah,
And
I think Chloe is absolutely right. Harrison does score a little bit more. That was always the biggest complaint about Alex. Obviously, he just
mhm.
he's seemingly, and I think that's why Sean Dyche liked him so much and was almost an automatic start. I always liked Iwobi far better on the left, or even in a 10 role, which we weren't able to use him in last season. They were often, Sean Dyche often had no other choices and had to play him along and on the right. But for this match against Brighton, the one that we're revisiting a little bit, he looked great. We started the game. If you did not get a chance to rewatch, you should. It was enjoyable, but you should absolutely go back. The one highlight you would see as soon as you started watching was the start of the match. Brighton immediately took possession, turned them almost instantaneously. Patterson up to Iwobi, and then Iwobi played that beautiful ball down to Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We got that Dominic Calvert-Lewin pirouette, as you were talking about. He fired in the cross to Doucouré, and then Doucouré hit it with his first touch and then put it in the back of the net. What were you thinking? What were you thinking, honestly, Chris, when Doucouré put that through?
So I'm not sure about the first time, other than I think I was ecstatic. I was setting up to watch the game, sit in the couch, and I went to grab a scotch before I sat down. A goal happened before I even could get up off my couch and come back. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot we scored so early. That's amazing." Then I had to restart the match.
Becky, I'm trying over here. It's just the one on my laptop. I'll see if I can do better. I'll run to Best Buy if I have to.
Well, credit where credit's due, Chad. Your microphone is amazing. I don't think it'll set up on with my USB setup over here, so we're looking at other options. But your audio that comes through is sounding excellent as well.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can. Hey, this is free content, so can't really. No complaints. No complaints. In Everton Nation. So our second goal, I got this all logged down here. Okay, our second goal was when we saw the turnover to a McNeil counter, played it up with an absolutely lovely cross to Doucouré, another first-time smash. I think that's we've really been missing is with Doucouré being out of the side. We haven't had anybody that just seems to get up the pitch and find space and be available for crosses from people like Dwight McNeil. Do you think this is something that we could get tomorrow if Doucouré is if he's feeling like himself again and we're able to play on the counter?
Yeah, I don't know if it's Dyche telling the players play safe. I know Ryan went to the match and thought that they seemed to play within themselves. Was it Dyche's tactics, and then he says it was the players, or were they within themselves? Hard to say. They play better away from home. I think there's every chance we give it that go. Like we take that risk, but I think what we need is more than Doucouré to have that energy back. I have McNeil that day had a vastly different approach. We can't have Ashley Young on that right wing. My view of how we have to take on tomorrow is a big part of it, and probably a little bit wacky or controversial. What I've have on that rolling tagline at the bottom. I actually think we need to have Harrison and Doucouré in the middle and bring in some naive, fresh energy from someone like a Dobbin on the right. He's a left footer, I believe, so he would cut in. And Coleman, if he is back, he was dealing with an illness, but I think he's back. So as long as they're not resting him, he may not do as many overlap runs. He might be slower, but if Dobbin's cutting in, there's a lot of space for him on that right wing to take those chances on.
Yeah. So you're thinking almost play Harrison in a central role, with just like a single number 6. Is that what you're thinking, and then play 2 people out wide?
Um, maybe so I think Adrisagana Gay, looking back at how he played against them last year, he was huge on the tackles. We know he doesn't provide much going forward, but he was a turnover machine. Garner can do it, but he seems like he's been out of sorts. We've said give him a rest. Onana maybe, but I think if you have Doucouré playing deep and saying kind of like holding him back the reins, let me at him. The second we have the ball, he just goes, And then Harrison is playing a little bit more advanced. He can run, kind of stir up some problems because he likes running, like spraying the ball. The problem that we know is, does he release it on time? That's kind of the challenge I think we're going to have, is that he doesn't have, like, Iwobi has a little bit more pace. But that's the problem I think we're going to have right now, is if you play Doucouré up front, it's kind of predictable. If he times his run and comes in a bit late, maybe he can get more of the ball and have more of an impact, because I think he really struggled.
Yeah, I think we need to play. I think we need to play fast, and I think we need a side that is capable of advancing the ball quickly, keeping possession, and getting their head up and finding runners. That's why I'm a big fan of Amadou Onana. I said last match for Palace, he was my man of the match. He did score the goal. He's often, and I think the one thing that is often overlooked about Onana is how strong he is in possession and how willing he is to make that advanced pass. It actually led to, in looking back at the highlights from last season, it led to our 5th goal, a tremendous ball played up by Onana, a streaking Dwight McNeil on the left. McNeil was able to gather the ball and then fire an absolute rocket near post, upper 90. I think we're going to need a lot more than that. That's why I would love to see Onana come back in the side. That's the one thing I think James Garner doesn't do. James Garner is fantastic at pressing. I think he's very sound defensively. I think he's very much a Dyche player, but he's not capable of leading that break or being creative in the same way that we had with an Alex Iwobi, that we seemingly have with an Amadou Onana. Adrisagana Gay certainly doesn't offer that. So for me, I think Onana is an absolute must start. And then Dwight McNeil, in the hopes that he can regain some of the form that we saw in the second half of last year. He, to me, is another must start tomorrow. I would be more than willing to get a little creative on the right. This is potentially where you could shift Garner over to the right. We saw him play in that right midfield role last year. Maybe we play Lewis Dobbin on the right. Probably is better on the left. Seems like we have an awful lot of left wingers on this side. Yeah, the whole side. Left wingers play right when they have to. So that's kind of where I'm at. Let's look at a few comments. We see Dobbin pace. Yes, he certainly does have it. McNeil, Doucouré, DCL. Brighton will they overcommit for us to expose it again? They aren't as good as this season as last. You're absolutely right. They're missing their backbone with McAllister and Caicedo. So we could find success in turning them over. I think they know how we're going to play. We've been playing it this way all season. We are going to try to play not a high back line, a little lower, keep our shape, stay very compact, watch the pressing. Frank Lampard can attest in our first match against Brighton last year what pressing Brighton will do. They'll run you off the field. And I think we see a very similar game plan tomorrow that we saw last year. And what we were able to do last year was turn them over and get upfield and create opportunities. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think really similar. And I will probably come back to the question about DCL, your main man, of if you'll start him or not. But
love him.
The left side for Brighton's been pretty interesting, because if you're a fantasy guy like I am, I tried to bring in a Stupinian thing, and it was a really clever pick. He's really excellent going forward, but gives the ball away a bunch. Then they keep kind of alternating him and Tyreek Lamptey. But now that the Matoma's back, I don't know what their best setup is on that side, but that's certainly a challenge. And I know you're saying if you press them, they love that. And if anyone's watched any of the, I think it's Tifo IRL, the athletic videos, they'll talk about the tactic of putting your studs on the ball. And Lewis Dunk is excellent at it. Tries to draw the players out, and that basically that press loses position, and they bypass your front six, and you're in trouble immediately. So I don't think we should be pressing, but I think we don't let them have the field. We let them have their half, and on the halfway line, wait for those mistakes again.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. My concern with it, and I stated it in post matches, I fear that this is just a side that cannot maintain possession. So if we're able to turn them over, will we look to be immediately progressive? Will we look to take immediate advantage of that? I certainly hope Sean Dyche has been drilling that all week, because if we are not, then we are risk turning it back over and then making ourselves incredibly vulnerable to Brighton. They certainly have the attackers that can score. Matoma, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit more, but Mitch scares the hell out of me for tomorrow. He is such a dangerous player, and this is potentially going to be Seamus Coleman or Ben Godfrey. I don't know what kind of shape Seamus is in right now, having been ill last week. We hope he's fit and firing for tomorrow. But what are you seeing out of Matoma this season? And then how would you anticipate our chances are of being able to contain him tomorrow?
So I think what's funny is he was excellent to start the year when Brighton were beating Wolves 4-0, and everyone went, yeah, Wolves are going to get relegated. And then they just surprised us. But for a little while there, Matoma and that left side with the Estupinian was like firing all cylinders. And then it's kind of been off and on for him for a while. So what I don't know, and Matoma looked better last week, but it was against Sheffield. Will he have that same fire and vigor? Matoma is fast, but compared to some of the wingers in the league, I think, and when we saw Coleman come in, he handled Doku actually quite well. Granted, it was into the match, so Doku didn't have the legs, but what I know that Coleman is really intelligent positionally to compensate for his lack of pace through kind of situational awareness. But the problem will be then if there's an overload, whoever's on the right wing, because if they do have Estupinian and they're willing to take that risk against us at home, a double team against Coleman, that's what scares me.
Yeah, and Estupinian is fantastic. So shape Coleman's legs are in right now, it is a vulnerability. But how I can never bet against Seamus Coleman. The amount of fight in him, I'll take Seamus Coleman any day of the week, and really mostly any matchup at this point. Let's see, Ryan Grant, I see you out there, our captain. Thank you so much for the kind words, and I think you're right about your comment on you can't press Brighton. As Chris just went into a couple moments ago, they will kill you. They play so tactically smart and clinical that they'll find ways to hurt you. Chris, let's look again at some of your lineup. You have your lineup scrolling along the screen, and we've been hinting at it. You want to run us through exactly who you play and what your thinking is and your starting 11?
Okay, so the back four is relatively similar to what we've said. So Pickford, Mikolenko, Branthwaite, Tarkovsky, no shock there. I want Coleman's experience, but I don't think Godfrey's been too poor. But I think crosses and delivery, that's where Coleman's going to win out. So if he's fit enough and can overcome the illness and play at least 80 minutes, I think we take him. In the midfield, I'm not sure with McNeil. I've been kind of tossing and turning on what the call is there, but my idea was if McNeil is given some kind of shot of ego and adrenaline to bring him back to last year, and
can I get one of those? I will take an ego and adrenaline shot. I'll take it.
Well, whatever went through his bones, maybe he likes playing in pink. Hopefully we play in pink tomorrow, because if we play in the alternate kit, the striped pajama shirt, I'm not sure it's going to really clash too well against the white and blue. So I bet he's going to wear pink again. Maybe that's
I think it's technically salmon. Are we calling it salmon?
You know what's funny? The commentators love trying to describe this, and they talk about like that Spurs outfit that's kind of like just it's a clever gray. Anyway, McNeil on the left, I think, is going to be. It's a wild card, but maybe I'm just resting on my laurels and the nostalgia of how good he was against Brighton. So maybe we expect to see that again. I think he would probably line up against Pascal Gross on the right side, and then Adingra is ahead of Pascal Gross. Now the central midfield is where I got a little bit funky with it. I was mentioning before, Onana and Ghana Gay would be the safe pair for me, and both James Garner and Beto have the pace. But what I wanted to see was keep Doucouré back and spring him forward, and Harrison as the link player playing centrally is looking pretty confident with both feet. And then you have basically a darting Beto that's trying to run into a channel, probably on the left side primarily, on the McNeil side, and then that'll allow Dobbin, who I have on the right side, to do a lot of cutting into that right-sided channel, and you have two pacey players, one a giant robust guy that needs a smaller shirt, and one that's well fitted in in Dobbin to basically just go running right at them and make them uncomfortable, knowing that they've overcommitted up front. That's my thinking. And DCL, again, if we're resting on laurels, DCL played excellent last year, but he is not. Watching that back, he's not the player he was last year. Maybe either he needs some of that Tarky ego we're talking about, but honestly, I think he needs some time on the bench to just basically make sure that he doesn't feel that he can some accountability, basically.
I think DCL. Yeah, you broke up a little bit there for me. Maybe it's my internet, maybe it's yours. I think DCL could use another one of those ego and adrenaline shots that you were mentioning earlier. We got to get that for the whole side. Let's take a second and talk about DCL, because he had a very polar week as you went through the week. We came off of Palace. Everybody's saying he's shit. As the week progresses, some of that data started coming out. We saw that all of his chances, DCL actually only had an XG of 0.22 for the entire match. We saw that he won 17 of 20 aerials, which is fantastic. So I think there was a lot of revisiting of DCL's performance to say, well, maybe he wasn't getting service. Those heading opportunities were incredibly difficult. I think it would be, I wish we could have perspective when talking about, and believe me, I am a DCL apologist all day long. But I think if we had an opportunity to play DCL into his feet where he could hold it up and maybe play him through the channels, I think we could unlock him. It seems like we're often getting him a case where he's matched up against behemoth center backs, and we're throwing desperate crosses into the box and hoping he can get his head on them and just do something athletic. If we're going to play like that, let's just play Beto. Beto's bigger, stronger, faster, has a higher vertical leap. I would say let's just play Beto. If we can play in a more creative way, absolutely want to run Beto out there. Honestly, Chris, where do you stand in what is matchup for Beto, and then what is your ideal matchup for a Dominic Calvert-Lewin? When should Sean Dyche look to play one or the other?
Trying to think. So we're talking either the team reversing or okay. We'll start with this.
Yeah.
If we are playing counter-attack football right now, I think Beto is the player, especially if the back four, the back two in particular, lack pace. If the back four have pace, it really doesn't matter what of a front pair it is. Beto does not hold up the ball well, not yet. He's basically walking around as if he's got like steel drums as shin pads, or just everything's flinging off him. And
I think Trimity's actually better at that than he is.
Yeah, from hold up play. And what was really interesting, DC, and you're talking about headers, winning a header at the halfway line and it goes to not our player and we lose possession. That's part of the problem of how we played last week. Congratulations, DCL won the header. Tactically, it was a complete waste. The header, the 2 of the 17 that he did win, he couldn't get on target. What I think would be really interesting, though, is, and I think we felt this, and Ryan talked about it on the post-match, if we're not running through the middle, and that's that bravery I'm talking about. Unless you're holding the ball, running through, and actually, if we just kick it from Tarkovsky to the striker, there's not a you can't just pass the ball flat on the ground, allow for that little pirouette move from DCL or Beto to go through the channel. You need to have one more pass at minimum running through the middle to release that ball. There's no point. You just the ball. No one has enough power other than Pickford to kick it far enough and strike it and break between their back four and the keeper. So we need to figure out in the midfield how we're going to release that ball effectively instead of a long ball. Doesn't matter who's up front if not. And I think maybe Peter's line here of yes, there's the creativity for them is excuses. Part of it's like if you can't release and I was trying to get to right there, if you can't release the ball to them, you're giving them really limited options. You can work really hard, work against Anderson, and I forgot the other defender. But if you can't, they've got a pretty big back four, or in the center two anyway, for both DCL and Better to try and win headers on. But they'll do it. But if they're not in the right spot, or they're not moving with like passing and moving, doing a flick onto someone who's doing an overlap and trying to test the offside trap, there's not much point to me. And missing sitters, as Peter said, is going to kill us no matter what we're doing, even if we're playing a kind of hoofball, just boot it, hope to get a corner, and occasionally they get tired enough that our tactics work in the final 15.
Yeah. You know what's been so frustrating to me is we've started the season and you saw those XG numbers were super high. We should have beat Fulham. We should have beat Wolves. And then as the season progressed, it seems like our output was actually meeting our XG, and that's when we started hitting a really nice. And then now we're again back where we were at the beginning of the season, where our XG is higher. Our XG was higher on Monday. Again, the output was just not there. What the frustrating thing about this is that it's supposed to be cyclical. It's supposed to, there's regression to the mean. There's progression to the mean. What we're seeing is that that's not the case. We're constantly posting fairly good XG numbers and getting relatively good chances, as we see everyone here on the comments are talking about the sitters that have been missed. And trust me, DCL has missed one. DCL has missed several. Decore missed one on Monday. They have been there. The opportunities have been there. I'm just waiting frustratingly for the luck to turn. I guess. Yeah. I'm certainly hoping that it comes. Ryan had a great comment here I wanted to revisit. Let me just scroll back up a little bit in the way I'm viewing it. We need to stop playing these long balls to isolated players. Nobody brave enough to get up through fear of losing. I couldn't agree with that more. We saw an awful lot of long ball, route one, direct coming off the foot of Pickford, coming from Tarkowski, just hoofing it up and relying so much on Calvert-Lewin to win headers, but then play it on to who is there for that second ball when we have Ashley Young on the right, we have McNeil, who is not the fleetest of foot, on the left, we have a Decore coming back into the side, not sure where his level of fitness was. So I feel like we really set Dominic Calvert-Lewin in a very difficult position to try to do everything. He's supposed to win headers off of long balls, but somehow hold them up, somehow play his teammates that might be running in. It's been a really difficult place to see Dominic Calvert-Lewin find out where he needs to fit in the setup. Do you think we'll see some of those same long balls that we saw on Monday? It certainly looked like Sean Dyche was getting a little frustrated with what he was seeing on the pitch. He made early subs, which is a very rare occasion in a Sean Dyche side. See the same approach, or do you think he'll change it up a bit?
I really hope we don't see the exact attacking style we did on Monday. If that was intentional, it needs a change. If it was the players, hopefully we've had a week to rectify it. Does that mean though that a diagonal ball to a winger who's running on and testing the fullbacks for Brighton that are quite common to just go nuts, try and do overlaps and see what happens, a bit like a Tottenham. If they're doing that, then a long ball to a winger is an excellent idea. But if they're playing back and just a solid back four, and all of a sudden poor Dobbins on the right or whoever's going to be there trying to have it, he's running to get to the ball, then he turns his back to it, and the fullback has just been there for a while. that's just not gonna work. So it's very much that long ball tactic we did, which I don't want to see the whole time. But if they are playing forward, that can expose them, and that's a channel we can run into. But it thoroughly depends on how Brighton want to play it. To me,
Mhm.
I would
Yeah,
much
it's
prefer us run through the middle and
oh,
shake it
yeah.
up.
Yeah, as would I. I think the players would probably feel that way as well. The one thing I noticed in the cup games that Virginia was playing for Pickford, oftentimes where it looked like Virginia wanted to play it through the middle or do something a little outside of hoofing it. He almost had to stop, regain himself, and then play long ball. You could see the instincts were there. They wanted to play in a certain way, and they've just been drilled that that's not the approach to take with this side. And maybe it's because Sean Dyche doesn't feel he has the players to play in a more attacking tactical or more tactical kind of possession based approach, or maybe this is just Dyche ball. I mean, we've seen it at Burnley, we've seen it now at Everton.
Mhm.
I'm hoping at some point we have some money to buy some more capable players, and then we see a different approach of Sean Dyche if he is around for it.
Mhm.
Chris, so uh, do we think is going to be, is he the long-term answer on the right? Do we uh, now that we have our midfield back
Mhm.
in fitness, think that there could be a potential that James Garner moves out to the right? I'd mentioned that earlier. We did see
Well,
that
I
last
really
year.
hope we don't. He does have the pace, but he didn't really feel comfortable there. Granted, he's not feeling comfortable in the middle. To me, I don't want to see it. If it's an emergency situation, sure. I think we've had a right wing problem. We tried at the beginning of the year. Do you think it worked out for those first few weeks, or do you think he was getting slagged off and it wasn't really him?
Could you ask one more time? You broke up on me.
Yeah, sorry, I know that we're cutting out here. So James Garner at the beginning of the season, we didn't have a right winger, and he was playing right mid for weeks on end,
Mhm.
getting a lot of flack from the audience, and I think me too. But do you feel that that was justified? Do you think he played okay on the right, or do you think it was the best of a bad situation and it wasn't his fault?
Yeah, it was a band-aid that over an open wound that is still, I won't be gross, but it was still, let's just say it probably needed a stitch, and that wasn't available to us. I thought Garner was really nice at left or at right back
Mhm.
to close the season. I know he played there in the England, is it the England
Under
under
21s, yeah.
21s? Yeah. So future on the international scene. And I wonder if maybe that's an option for him going forward if he's going to stay in Everton or move on to somewhere else.
Mhm.
Um, I was really hopeful for James Garner. I thought there was a lot there. I love his work rate. I love how he presses. He is aggressive. He looks like he will
Mhm.
run you over to try to take the ball off your foot. I just worry that he doesn't offer enough in attack, and I think
Mhm.
goals are so precious in this side that we need players that offer a little something in attack.
Yeah, and I think if Harrison goes to the right or goes to the bench, Dobbin goes to right midfield, and my idea of having Decore playing the deep center midfielder as a box to box six, if he comes to the number 10 and you have Garner play with Garner Gay, what I imagine will happen this week, and I'm going to try and tie this into the Blues comment here. Um, James Garner has a lot of pace. He seems a lot more comfortable when the ball's on the ground, but he wants room to run into. And when it seems like the ball's bouncing around, he's not sure when to commit to it. That seems to be when he gets stuck out. And a lot of hoof ball in the air, bouncing awkwardly. What do I do
Mhm.
with it? That seemed to be a trouble for him. But he's got pace. And to what the Blues are saying here, we don't have many dribblers per se, but you don't need to be a dribbler to take one or two touches, receive, think about it, and pass the ball. For me, that's been the problem. Is not even that we need a Jeremy Doku. We need someone to receive the ball in the middle so that you have enough weight and venom on a through ball, so it's not just dying by the halfway line because Tarkovsky kicked it and it's just fading right there. That's my thought with it. But maybe the Blues and some others think we need to have more pacey wingers and people that can come into the middle, like a Martinelli or a Saka. I would love that, but I don't think we can afford such players.
Yeah, I'm just tired of seeing these other teams have these dynamic wingers, and we're sitting here trying to put a squad together of a Jack Harrison on loan who we don't even know if he even has a future at Leeds, while Anthony Gordon is playing at the level that he is playing over at Newcastle. I see some comments here around would we pay Jack Harrison the 16? Jack Harrison's not worth 16 million pounds. There was been some conversations in various podcasts that I listened to that Leeds wanted to let him go. First of all, let's correct that right now. Leeds did not want to let him go. He had an option in his contract where if they were relegated, a Premier League side could come in and take him on loan, and that's exactly what happened. Leeds did not want to let him go. They certainly are doing just fine without him in the Championship. But no, he is not a $16 million player. I don't think Everton would exercise that $16 million option. Not like we have it. I saw that comment as well. 16 pounds, let alone 16 million to buy a player with. What would be love his effort, love his first touch. I think he plays with the ball a bit. He's shown to be a capable finisher. What do you think is the proper number for Jack Harrison?
I mean, in this market, 16 is actually quite cheap, and that doesn't mean I can afford, or probably anyone of the Follow Everton contingent can afford 16 million for a player. But there's a lot of people worth more than that aren't good. For 16, sure, but I guess my question to you, if Willie Gnonto was available for 16, for me, I'd take Willie Gnonto. I think he's probably worth more than 16, though, and maybe that's why Harrison's the one that's available to us.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's no way that you would get Willie Gnonto for 16. We're talking about a 21-year-old Italian international, tons of pace, tons of potential. There's a reason why Everton and Kevin Thelwell wanted him so badly. I think I saw the number around 35 or something when there was rumors that Everton might be trying to bring him into the fold. We had absolutely no chance of spending anywhere close to that number. So maybe in that, comparing those two, you're probably right. I would say Jack Harrison may be worth 16. Who has never had incredible Premier League production. He didn't put up fantastic numbers in the Premier League last year. He hasn't put up fantastic numbers in the Championship. Potential is still there. I think Somerville has been a much better player for Leeds this year. Now that, I mean, if we could get him over to Everton, please, I'd be incredibly happy. I see it, Pete. Nato might be shite. We don't know yet. But I would love to see it. If we were able to pay it, I would absolutely love to see it. So my side for tomorrow, I would absolutely go. I mean, Mikolenko, Tarky, Branthwaite, absolute locks, must starts. Obviously, not saying anything there. I would personally go Seamus Coleman. I think you had mentioned it earlier, Chris. Just Seamus's ability to on crosses, willing to overlap. If that's in Sean Dice's kind of mind for tomorrow, I would love to see some overlapping from our fullbacks. Seamus Coleman is certainly capable of doing that. Then I would love to see a midfield two of Idris Agana Gay and Amadou Onana, Decore them in a more advanced midfield position. I'd start Dwight out left. If Danjuma was able to play, I would actually think of here. White could certainly use some time off to rest his legs and maybe get his mind right with everything that he has going on in his personal life. Just want to say, hey, Dwight, you're not watching, but if you were, we're all with you with everything that you're going through. And I would probably go with Jack Harrison on the right, and just the hopes that he can get some kind of cross in to the feet of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and then we could hopefully jump out to that early 1-0 lead, 1-0 lead like we did last year. And of course, I just said it. I would absolutely 100% start Dominic Calvert-Lewin again. I don't trust Beto enough to hold the ball up. I don't trust his first touch. I think he is an absolute freak of an athlete, so much raw ability. And if Beto was 22 years old instead of 26, I think he would be worth 80 million pounds. But he's not. He's 26. He's still incredibly raw at 26. And I think he is great. I think he's great at overwhelming center halves that don't have the pace or athleticism to keep up with him. But hey, this is the Premier League, and you're playing against those guys every week. And Beto certainly seems to struggle when he is matched in size and pace, like he will almost certainly every week in the Premier League. Maybe, if he's playing Sheffield United or something who don't have that.
Well, Beto against Ashley Young would be an amazing matchup for Beto, and that's about all I can think of right now.
I think you against Ashley Young would be an interesting matchup. I don't mean to throw Ashley too far. I don't mean to disparage him too much. I want to apologize again, not like he's listening, but last week I did give him a 1 out of 10. I remembered he did have the goal line save. So I'm going to boost that number up to 3 out of 10 for the Palace match.
Yeah, when I get really annoyed, I give about a 2, but I don't know. It's like you go to university and you're like, you can't give a 0 or 1. That seems unscientific, but you're like, I really want to. So I round it to like a 2 or a 3 every time. The Blues also brought up, I think Danjuma will be out for another couple of weeks, according to Dyche's press conference. So he's not going to be available.
Yeah, and it looks like Gomes is probably a couple weeks out still. I don't think we see Dele Alli for the rest of the season. And is everyone else healthy then in the squad?
Gomez, Dele Alli. Are there any of those players that are just like injured on loan that we just don't see that are still on the books? I'm trying to think if we have any of those kind of guys. But
yeah, well, Lewis Warrington, he played recently for the under 21s. Stanley Mills is out for the rest of the year. He came back from his loan, I think at Oxford, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quiz me too much on the young guys. But no, I think everybody in the senior squad is mostly healthy with the exception of Danjuma and Gomez.
Yeah, I think fortunately, and that's one thing you have to give Dyche credit to generally, we have not been in a situation with a very limited threadbare squad. We've gotten rid of a lot of players, and the availability of that squad has been quite good. DCL's come back. He hasn't been, touched whatever plank of pine you've got near you to make sure that he doesn't go back to the injured list. But honestly, Dele Alli has been injured a lot, so I'm not sure we can really. It's not a Dyche problem. We have the squad we have. It's threadbare. Doucouré's back. It sounds like he's not injured. He's recovered fine. So I think we have a really good fitness program under Dyche. I just want something more creative at the same time, and that goes in waves. And I think a lot of it's confidence. He lets maybe he lets them go to town and kind of do what they want, and that's sometimes why this happens. Why we just don't have the certain things like play defensive and then go all out, guys. And he's yelling and trying to keep him in line, but unless you're behind the scenes, how do we know? It's hard to know what they actually cover or what he covers for this team.
Yeah. Hey, let's take a second and give a shout out to those physios and that athletic staff at Everton. They've done a really nice job of keeping raising the roof. They've done a really great job of keeping the side for the most part fit this season. DCL has figured out his body. It looks like no more hamstrings, injuries, and issues for him. So we're going on 50 minutes here. We know it's nearly 1 o'clock over in the UK, so we appreciate you sticking with us. This is Follow Everton. This is your Midnight Blues. We hope to make this a regular occurrence here on the channel. So, Chris, let's do it. Let's predictions tomorrow. What is it? It's a 3 o'clock kickoff in the UK. So what is your predictions tomorrow?
Brighton are such a wild card. I'm going to go for 3-3. I know that sounds wild, but I see something just completely wacky and unexpected, but I don't see us blowing them out the water. I can look like the biggest fool tomorrow, but to me, I think it's going to be something a little bit unexpected. Brighton have been so together recently, and doing a really good job holding the ball, but that would be just fitting that it's the 3-3 tomorrow. But yeah, the Blues
Whoa.
is right. I could so see that's the expected lineup, but I just have a funny feeling it's going to be really weird.
Yeah, we're I think we're due for a weird one. We haven't when was the last time we had a good weird one? I think it's been a bit. All right, get your predictions in now in the comments. Want to see them. If anybody has a crazy one, get them in now. I know I did. I probably did jinx it. I'm gonna say 2-1. It's not adventurous. I know. I'm gonna say 2-1. Everton win. I think we play very, very sound. I think Sean Dyche probably really drilled into them what the approach needs to be. I hope we echo the display from last year. I'm gonna say goals from. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna say a goal from Dominic Calvert-Lewin from open play. We get an open play goal, and then of course we'll get one from a set piece. I'm thinking another corner off the foot of Dwight McNeil, and let's say Jared Branthwaite on that one. I know everybody would think Tarky, but I'm gonna say a Jared Branthwaite goal and a Dominic Calvert-Lewin goal from open play.
Yeah.
All right. Any last thoughts before we take off?
I don't know how much of interest this is to you, but I thought it might be interesting. Have you been following a lot of the Forest chat? Because there's a lot, again, it's a lot of the rumor and speculation, but do you feel like their timed release of their is going to be related with our appeal, or do you think the Premier League is going to separate these out?
Yeah, from what I've heard, that we're going to get the results of the appeal first. There would be no judgment on this Everton second charge, and then Forest's first, obviously, until the appeal was heard and announced. So I'm certainly thinking that we're going to get the results of the appeal first, and then we'll see. We'll see on the second charge and what Forest is in for. I'll be very curious to see where Forest come in at. They pleaded that they just missed the deadline on selling Brennan Johnson. I don't.
They just missed it, but it was intentional. So
yeah, it's not a
did they
viable
miss it?
excuse.
Yeah, but it is fun. Like, I think in a different way. I mean, they cheated by the rules. Really, they had a sporting advantage. To say it's fair that they should be kept to a different standard by coming up from the Championship to the Premier League, I think that's certainly a component of it that we have to think. That I don't think it's really fair, but at the same time, the same teams that get relegated get parachute payments for 3-year installments that decrease down. So what is fair? It's really hard to gauge. But if you're simply saying that they knew those financial rules and they decided they would benefit from it because they could make more money, I think that's the right financial practice. It's kind of messed up that we have a transfer deadline cut off in the middle. But if that is the rule, it wasn't simply Everton thinking they're good, but they did a arguably an unreliable loan payment instead of to a bank to Mashiri, who maybe he's not going to pay it back at the rate it's going. But that seemed a little bit more like non-sporting to try and avoid a little bit more tax rather than we can make an extra 30 million on a player. To me, those are two different things. But honestly, I don't think either squad should be getting deductions. But heck, we're at where we're at. So
Yeah, I would much prefer it be a financial penalty. It doesn't seem that it'll be just that. I have a feeling that we're going to get some kind of, hopefully, a reduction in our initial point deduction, a reduction in the deduction. Say that 3 times fast. But my question is, when are we going to hear something about Man City's 115 charges? When are we going to hear something about Chelsea? Richard Masters said when he was being grilled by that board, and I apologize, I don't remember the name of the board he was being interviewed by, but he said that a date has been set. When are we going to hear that? It seems they talk about transparency, but then I don't feel like we get transparency in any part of the process, whether that be, the charges that have been brought against Everton or the charges that have been brought against Forest or Chelsea or Man City.
It wouldn't shock me if the date released is subject to a major world-defining event so they can sneak it in 2 hours after everyone's gone to bed on a big night, and therefore that's the release date. Anything's possible. Sometimes it's a timed release, and sometimes it's subject to variables.
Yeah. That's what they call a Friday news dump here in the States. I don't know if you guys have that in the UK, but we certainly are guilty of it here in our media. Thank you, Everton Fan Advisory Board. Yes, the DCMS Select Committee. So that was who was grilling Richard Masters. Forrest won't get deducted. Okay, well, we'll see. We'll see, Peter. All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a late one. Look for more Midnight Blues from me and Aussie Chris. We're going to try to do these for you semi-regularly. You've been watching Follow Everton, and up the Toffees.
Up the Toffees.
Hey, that was good.